Let me welcome five awardees today: Professor Shyam Asolekar, Professor Alok Goyal, Professor Mukul Chandorkar, Professor Arun Kumar Sridharan, and Professor Arti Kardo. So thanks to them for sparing time and agreeing to join this panel discussion. And with this brief introduction, I'll hand over to Professor Sandeep Roy, who has kindly agreed to be host for this panel discussion. So over to Sandeep Roy.
Thank you. I must begin by thanking Professor Patwardhan, who is actually now heading the PPCCLT facility of our institute for conducting this particular panel discussion for today and maybe the next Wednesday. In fact, I had chaperoned a similar event last year also when we were about starting this whole process of online teaching. So I can surely see that he's not a person who's once bitten, twice shy. So he has had the courage to have invited me once again to manage things. So as you know, the theme of today's panel discussion is exploring new face-to-face teaching paradigms, conflating the physical and the digital. So it's surely a very apt theme for the current times, and it's also very challenging, I think, not only for us at IIT Bombay, but I would say at the academic community at large. Well, some of us actually have already been experimenting with online teaching for years, okay, but its exclusive use has been sort of foisted on us for the last 2 years because of this COVID pandemic. So actually, I find it miraculous or curious that this nano-organism not only has it challenged our well-being, but it has also prompted us to revisit and reinvent the profession itself. So that way, it has done us a good service as well, I would think. So although we are still caught up in the pandemic, I think there are glimmers that we may soon be able to come out of it and go back to our old style classroom contact with students and go back to our old style of teaching. But I think with the experience that we have had for the last 2 years, I'm sure that some of us, if not all of us, would probably not like to retrace our steps back and go back to the point where we diverged from. Because I think most of us have quite warmed to the experience of digital teaching, and we are now able to clearly probably see and perceive its distinct advantages. And above all, the flexibility and of course the ease that it offers. Okay, so it's kind of, I think, a natural order of things that most of us will try and experiment some blending between the two. That is to say, clear classroom teaching, which obviously has its great advantages for its immediacy and its availability of instant feedback, which are very critical to good teaching, and of course also for experience of the students. But to address this question, I think it's pretty challenging one, because I've been trying to think about it once Professor Patwardhan invited me. There are many unresolved things, there are many uncertainties, and there are many questions that would probably need to be addressed in order to lend this whole enterprise a good structure. So some of the questions I think Professor Patwardhan has already shared with you, which I had communicated to him. I think the foremost of them is that how will this influence the way we teach? If you are really able to blend the two, and it has to be something very optimal. Okay. And so far as content development also, will it have an impact? And of course, the assessment part, which has remained very challenging throughout these 2 years. It has taxed our colleagues. Many of us have actually not been able to really sort of be so vigilant. Others have been, but while I appreciate that, I think it's quite a bit of task, and it's something like your time invested wrongly in something which should be spent in something much more productive. But it's an important part of any teaching and learning. So assessment has to be considered of paramount importance. And if these two, bimodal kind of approach, if it will actually help us better to improve the assessment. And finally, I think it will change us in some sense as teachers. So these things are probably very important. Now, I anticipate there will be no single, blended model of teaching. It will be probably as varied as there are individual teachers. Okay, so, but at the same time, I think we need to remember that we have to make the experience a fluid one for the students. So if it is very subjective, the method that we choose, it may not go down well with the student. So some kind of structure is probably needed, which could be universal, and then one can possibly innovate based on one's individual, proclivities. And an important aspect also I feel is that can it be used to actually further good research or improve a better research? So can we probably make use of it in such a manner so that the trivial things in research can be probably automated in some sense, and the more productive part can be done in a more face-to-face way. And I think you may need to tweak some of the learning management systems that have been used so far in order to get this hybrid. So I think there are many questions, and I thought that it should be a good idea to actually listen to our colleagues who, for their past year of effort, have been accorded the highest appreciation from our students, the recipients of the Professor Sukhatme, SP Sukhatme Award. So we have had 15 of them, and many of them have been gracious enough to join us today. So for today's session, as Professor Patwardhan already indicated, we have Professor Shyam Asolekar, Professor Alok Goyal, Professor Mukul Chandorkar, and Professor Arun Kumar Sridharan, and Professor Arti Kalro. So I will probably I'll call you in the same order, or, there's no real reason for it, but it's just that's the reason, that's the order that Professor Patwardhan has made me, and I'll stick to that. So you may have been already informed that we will have the speakers, speak about her view for about 7 to 8 minutes, maybe a maximum of 10 minutes. And then we will take the open session and engage with the audience once all the speakers are through. This is just in the interest of management of time better. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand and put forward the question, or you can put it in a chat box as well. So we will begin, but as we begin, I'll request you to please put yourself in a mute mode, and you can unmute yourself once the discussion phase begins. So thank you all for your presence. I will now invite Professor Shyam Asolekar to give his views for the audience. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is a great honor to be participating in this panel discussion. And I have never rated myself as a great teacher, because I have been a student of some of the superlative teachers in my career, and I am surrounded by several excellent teachers in my own department. Absolutely great teachers like Viren Sethi or Anurag Garg or Shubhankar Karmakar. I have great teachers in my department, and very proud to be sitting in their company when I sit in faculty meetings or discuss with them about the course content. There are many things I wish I bring in the discussion, but because of the shortage of time, I'm going to say extremely few things as my opening remark, and then basically leave it to more questions or discussion. Is it possible? Is it possible to share a slide, Professor Roy?
Yes, please go ahead. By all means.
Yeah, I will share a slide. I think there's a share mode here. I don't use this platform. I think this is, yeah. I don't want to, am I sharing this slide?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just,
if you want.
Yeah, so shall I make it
Yeah, you can go full screen.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I just would like to mention what I expect yeah, out of my teaching or whatever interaction that I initiate in the class or class with the students in a learning teaching process. Obviously, there are 4 dimensions of cognition: Anubhuti, Upalabdhi, Sangyan, and Bodh. feeling, realization, anubhuti, achievement, accomplishment, or cognizance or cognition, and sense, apocalypse, or tenor. There are several dimensions. And then what is metacognition is basically cognition beyond cognition. This is the theory of learning and teaching. We all have studied it, and some people have done it more consciously than others, but everybody knows this. The what I expect from myself is basically skill building or teaching the syllabus is not enough. That is what I believe. And there is nothing more useful in the practice of engineering than enforcing the reinforcing the fundamental knowledge, concepts, and theory. Absolutely, nobody can become a practically good engineer if concepts are weak, or fundamental knowledge is not there, or theory is not understood by the student. So let what people say, many people say IITs don't teach, or academic education doesn't make our engineers ready for a real life, and they don't know the design codes, or they don't know this or that information, or they don't know how to file certain papers in certain authorities. I don't think that is knowledge, that is simply information. So the job of me as a teacher, I would like to believe is, and whatever little understanding I have developed over a period of last 29 years, is that fundamental knowledge, concepts, and theory is the basic education goal. And the two wheels of chariot of engineering practice are essentially the science and technology, for in my case, environmental engineering. And both put together make a foundation of the so-called engineering science. And that is what we have been typically reinforcing, teaching to our students, engineering science, which comprises of both elements, science and technology, and obviously fundamental knowledge, concepts, and theory associated with them. So in my opinion, the teacher plays the role of catalyst in learning, and the ultimate objective of this learning teaching process should be Atma Bodh, that is discovery of self or self-realization, and Atmonnati, that is spiritual progress. I cannot imagine that anything else, if I do, will really benefit my students. So what all my effort ultimately should give these two outcomes, because by the time they graduate, they are fairly old. They are not very young. They are 21, 22 years old, and they should have these two outcomes as takeaway from our institution. So what is the pathway for that? They should be able to distinguish between information versus knowledge, or selfishness versus fairness, and arrogance versus courage. And I really give a lot of importance to all these three issues: knowledge, fairness, and courage. Because if you are weak in even one of these, I do not think you can be useful to the community, you can be useful to the nation, or you can be useful to the organization that you are going to serve. So therefore, these three things are extremely important as a pathway. So the innovation for who has been always a quest for me in my teaching, and water and wastewater management as the theme for social engineering and business for justice. And that is where the work is in progress. And all my assignments or the teaching is surrounding these. And my two constituencies are the girls who are carrying twigs and a ghada of water on their head even today, and the snake, which the python that stays in my constructed wetland behind Hostel 8 on the bank of Powai Lake. You have these two, ecology and girls in this country, the people who support the half sky, and that I clearly consider as my ultimate objective and constituency. And I think with the help of the online teaching experiences, a lot of experiential component, which otherwise I was banking on taking them to the industry, taking them to the village, taking them to the slum, and showing them the problems of on ground, and getting them acquainted with the grassroots. Now I will be able to use multimedia and online teaching exercises. Second benefit that I'm seeing with the online teaching is that the face-to-face teaching will become richer now for me, better, more effective for me, because a lot of my tutorials, self-learning, I can pre-record and leave it on Moodle, and they can visit those clips and those videos and those exercises on their own. So I think overall the great combination of online resources and teaching face to face will be achieved by me. And I must admit that I was always separating these two things. I was showing films in class, I was taking them to field, but using the online resources the way I have been using for past 2 years or past 1.5 years is something which is very phenomenal, and it has given a lot of mileage to me in terms of utilizing the open source knowledge elsewhere. And I think that is the greatest takeaway for me. And I'm personally quite excited to combine the face-to-face with the online, because now more experiential, more personal growth related material I can pass on to them through the engineering exercises, through the cost benefit analysis exercises, through the social assessment exercises that I give in the class. Now I can do it more effectively because of combining the online with face to face. And I will rest my brief here, Sandeep.
Okay, thank you, Professor Asolekar. Not surprisingly, you have dwelt upon the metaphysics, and I think which is very critical also in the process of learning. We will surely return to your deliberations, and we will move on to our next speaker, that is Professor Alok Goel from Civil Engineering. Professor Goel.
Good evening and thank you, Shyam. First time I learned the theory of learning and teaching. My case is much simpler than most of the people. After last year when we started doing online teaching, initially it was difficult because we had to organize all the material in a electronic mode, PowerPoint mode, load it, upload it before the lectures. But that we were doing it, but not thoroughly. Once we started doing that part, things became easier for us, not necessarily for the students. They took some time to get used to it. But when I teach the students, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking at what they can absorb, whether they can think through a problem, understand a problem. So online teaching is very convenient for us because we are well equipped. We have a whiteboard, PowerPoints, everything, a room without noise. So things are easier, but not necessarily for the students. And problem is that I teach them a structural design course. I used to take them around on campus to show them that whatever we teach, we practice. And in IIT construction, whatever we never practiced properly, they also used to get the idea that whatever is taught in the class, not necessarily it is followed exactly in the field. That is the only part that is missing. Otherwise, I find that online teaching is going to stay, and it is very useful to the students. They can miss a class, look at a recorded lecture later on. Teachers cannot, if they wish to learn, they can learn. They can ask questions if they wish. But difficulty is that I cannot ask them or force them to answer a question, because most of the time in my lectures, when I pause for 15 seconds for questions, they do ask questions without a video, and some of them don't ask questions. So I'm not sure whether they are learning or not learning, but they can always cover it up later on because everything is recorded, documented. The only problem starts with the assessment, that we have to put extra efforts for the assessment. I don't proctor my exams, so I have found a new way to give them the exams, that I create a problem which is different for everybody. I give them the problem a week in advance, so it's more or less half take-home exams. and remaining on that day of exam, in 4 hours, they have to modify their whatever online submissions they have. So limitations are the problems have to be redesigned so that they can use Excel or other softwares and submit online mode. Otherwise, proctoring becomes a major difficulty, both psychologically and physically. And of course, when I'm doing the exam, I don't want anybody to look at me continuously. So when I was a student, we never liked when the instructor is standing next to us. So same is the situation with the students. But things are going on. And in my opinion, the only thing we will be missing is engineering practices, the physical understanding. I can show them 10 videos. They may not get the same feeling which they get once they see physically. Especially when I break a bar in my lab, when they see it physically, it gives them a better feeling, better understanding compared to irrespective of how many pictures I show. So that part is the only part which will be missing. But in the long run, if we have online teaching and maybe weekly discussions physically, that combined mode may go better, in my opinion. And I'm not sure whether the institute will give the students the option to attend classes online if we are going to transmit all the lectures online or record them online. I have not much to say, but that is the way I feel. And the problem is at the students' end, they don't have the necessary equipment, or most of them don't have an isolated room where they can attend their classes. So when I have a project meeting with my research assistants, though they are working from home, they keep on working. So meetings are good, everything is communicated. Whiteboard is very useful tool. You can discuss anything on whiteboard, though writing requires some practice. But again, the life face-to-face or teaching face-to-face has its own pleasure. But the job can get done even with online teaching. I don't have much to add. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Goel. I think some of your comments are very welcome, and I think they are universal. One is that, of course, F2AF has its own charms. There is no doubt about that. How to retain that and actually combine it with digital teaching is what we are probably looking at. Thank you. We will return to your talk once again at the end of it. So now I invite Professor Mukul Chandorkar to put forth his views.
Professor
I think you're on
you're
mute.
mute. Yeah, you're on mute, Professor Mukul.
I'm sorry about it. As you can see, I'm still not very used to the technology of this. But so what I'd like to do is sort of once we get back to the classroom, hopefully very soon, I think we might need to take a look at the short-term issues and the longer-term issues, the benefits and the things that we would need to take a look at. Let me take a look at the short-term activities first. Now, from what I've seen, during the online phase of teaching, not only in IIT Bombay but elsewhere, students, I must say that this time I'm teaching a postgraduate course this time, a first-year MTech kind of a course, and I do find that people who are in my course this year have not had adequate preparation from their earlier last year of undergraduate, wherever they've done that. And that is a very different thing from what was my experience of the same course 1 year back when I had taken it also in the online mode. The students then were slightly better prepared than the students now in my class. And I think that has to do with the fact that the current students have also been through their through an online mode of teaching in the final year of their undergraduate education or something, wherever they've done that. So to a certain extent, I think when we start face-to-face classes, One of the things that we might need to do is to compensate for that to a certain extent. So we might need to modify our curriculum to ensure that the basics are again covered and then carry on. So that is the first aspect of the short-term activity that many of us might need to do. Of course, that's a very course-dependent and content-dependent thing, but I think at least a few of us would need to address that question. The other aspect uh, of compensation that we might need to do in the short term is the collaboration aspect. Again, it's the same. It's a very similar kind of a situation. I mean, even though students have these technological platforms where collaboration is supposedly made easier and students are using them, I think people are still not used to using them in the most effective way for the purpose of collaborating for learning, which is something that happens fairly naturally when people are in class and in hostels, especially in the case of IIT Bombay, in hostels and meeting each other and things of that kind. So in spite of the presence of or the availability of fairly good platforms for collaboration, I don't think at least the students that I have been interacting with have used them as effectively as they could have. So that is another thing that's an important aspect of the learning process that we might need to foster once we start face-to-face classes, hopefully very soon. Now coming to the long-term issues of this, uh, as Professor Roy was just mentioning at the beginning of this of the sessions, uh, there are several aspects to making, well, in a sense, making the transition from combining the online and the face-to-face modes. One of the components is the content, the course content. Another component is a platform that we can use, and the third is the assessment method. Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, even the previous two speakers have also sort of alluded to those. I'm going to leave the assessment out because it's a really hard problem, and I don't have enough experience to be able to comment on that. It has too many components associated with it for me to make a comment. But let me just take a look at the content and the platform and how we could sort of use that uh, to the best when we start in-person classes or face-to-face classes out here. What we have done in the past, it can be of use to us. As far as the content is concerned, of course, I mean, we have all now created content that is suitable for online delivery, and that's going to help us a lot. Uh, Especially in the case of, I mean, the trivial cases are if someone has missed out something because of some reason, they can come and take a look at the video and things of that kind. But even more so in the fact that someone can revisit material that has been done in class earlier that they have not understood well uh, at the time of the class, and can revisit it as many times as they need to make sure that they understand. And that combined with the fact that there are in-person TAs and in-person instructors all over the place, I think can be a very useful thing. So the content and the fact that it is available online on demand, so to speak, is going to help us, I think. The other aspect of the platform, now there, again, I mean, it is going to help, but as I was mentioning in my previous short-term kind of activity present talk, uh, I don't think we have utilized the sort of facilities that these platforms provide for collaboration as much as we could have. And I don't know I mean, I don't know the remedy to that, but I think that is something that could be investigated in the future as well. Of course, I mean, the use of a collaborative platform when everyone is on the campus, again, a bit of a questionable thing, but I think that the collaboration aspect of these platforms is something that we need to take a look at. And in addition to that, speaking a little bit further on the platforms itself, I mean, at the beginning of the online process or online teaching process last year, I did a little bit of a fiddling around with open source platforms as well. I mean, of course, they are not to the same level of maturity as the platforms that we have eventually used for our teaching activity in the online mode. For example, the WebEx platform that we're using right now. The open source platforms are not that mature in a sense because they are, well, they are open source. But once the pressure on those platforms reduces, we really don't need to depend on so many features that the commercial or the better developed platforms do provide. And I think we could take a look at the use of in-house open source, well, internally hosted open source platforms for collaboration and whatever other activity as well. So I think this is what I would like to sort of stop at. Thanks a lot for listening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Chandorkar. I think you have highlighted a point which nobody would disagree with. It's that is to say that in the face-to-face learning and when the students are in close proximity, one of the very important contributions is peer-to-peer learning. And I think, as you have rightly pointed out, we have not really explored the resources that these platforms provide for collaborative teaching. So I'm sure that this point, if the developers themselves understand, they would probably sharpen the platform itself so that this collaborative, aspect of teaching becomes more easy. Thank you, and we will again revert to you once all the speakers are through, and I'm sure there will be interesting discussions about these points also. Thank you. So we can now move on to Professor Sridharan from SOM or mechanical. Sorry, yeah, Professor Sridharan. I think you're on mute, Professor Sridharan.
Yeah, good evening. Audible? Yeah. I think everybody has this starting trouble, I think, unmute. So thank you for this opportunity. And most of us, I think, are on the same page with regard this online, offline business. But I have few specific points or examples or feedback or whatever you want to call about this online mode, which I am a completely chalk and board person. Okay, I seldom use slides. I do use for basic derivations, and that also I go to the board and kind of rederive it step by step. And the slides are basically where the final forms are there and the assumptions are written, etc. But the maths is written on the board. And for me to transform from a chalkboard kind of person to an online person was scary. Okay, to be very honest, it was very scary because I somehow don't feel the same level of contact with the students if I do not write. I don't know. It's probably a OCD or whatever you want to call it. So thankfully, this whiteboard thing helped, and I am still my own self, except that I don't see my students in front of me, which is really unfortunate. So this whiteboard kind of I'm able to write everything and also use the other online available resources like soft copies of textbooks, etc. So what I realized between last year and this year, same course, this is a second year core UG course, about 78 students this time, 64 last time. And this being the second time of online and third time that I'm teaching it, I realized that I'm able to cover a little bit more than last year now. Okay, and that was primarily because whatever was there last year as materials that you show them, like you derive a set of equations in Cartesian coordinates, and then the cylindrical ones are there in the book. But you show them, it's all there, written, ready, and then I can just use the reference from last year's whiteboard and then give it to the students, show it in class, and there is no need to re-explain how things are done like how you would do in a regular classroom. Of course, PPTs also do the same thing, that you have it written once and we take care of it. But somehow, because PPT is not handwritten, again, this is my idiosyncrasy probably, that I somehow feel it a little different from my handwritten whiteboard stuff. The good thing was that, again, over time, I realized this, that I could use the examples of last year and put them up so that they have additional problems to see. Videos from last year, which I had uploaded for the class, where over and above what I'm teaching in the tutorial, now they are able to see. So when last year's batch could get 4 problems on a topic, this year's batch is getting about 7 or 8 with the old problems. So it as a teacher, I'm able to give them more examples, and also because the examples are more, the questions are more, and because the questions are more, hopefully even those people who are not asking those questions are also able to appreciate the concepts, the topics, and are able to learn a little bit better than what it would be otherwise. So the flexibility to incorporate more material is there. And even the students who are not viewing these videos, probably, out of curiosity, when they come to class, "Hey, this boy is talking about some problem which sir has uploaded last time." They may want to check it out. And one good thing about this online thing is you can increase the speed of the video and finish viewing a 40-minute video in about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how capable you are. So it really, I like that aspect, because students get to see more varying types of problems, and people who are generally otherwise silent and non-participating also get to a different aspect of the topic, seeing the discussion that take place in the tutorial session on problems which I'm not solving there technically, but that what I have uploaded a week before. And this is something which we unfortunately don't get to do in regular classroom. So when we go back to the offline mode, I think this aspect we can incorporate. So every class can have an online component which may be used by the instructor as per his or her wish, over and above the face-to-face class, where he can use his resources and populate the online portal and have a discussion based on what has been uploaded there. And this helps the faculty also. Like, I taught this course in convective heat transfer on ARPIT 2019. Government of India thing, which came very suddenly, and we, Professor Prabhu, myself, and Shankar Krishnan from our department taught it. And whenever I teach PG level heat transfer core course in the spring, and the convective heat transfer part, I don't even go to a textbook for most of the thing. I just listen to our videos that are there in, and what kind of examples were given. Can we give better examples now? So the notes are there, but it always helps to hear something. So our videos actually are very useful for us. And for students who have not taken the course and who are appearing for exams, our fluid mechanics videos, for people appearing for qualifier exams this year in our department, they requested us to provide access to the videos. So this is true for other courses also. And I think from a utility point of view, this is really useful. Students have videos from the several faculty member, and they can choose to view, listen to topics based on their likes and dislikes, and a particular topic from different people. It's something which is a blessing in disguise. So if you are able to use this online, the lessons learned from the online mode to our advantage, create like a corpus or repository of material that we can use as faculty for a long term for all our students this year and several years down the line. I think this whole thing can be turned to our advantage. So when students come back to campus, the only thing probably I feel that which we missed greatly was the student-to-student interaction. Of course, peer-to-peer interaction for faculty also. So that aspect we will get back, and I think all of us will value the classroom teaching and learning much more than what we were thinking of it before the lockdown happened. We used to think of it as, okay, this is the only way that's possible. Online internet is there. Why? There are so many proponents of this online education several years ago, and everything is there. Why do we need teachers? It was teachers are redundant or will be redundant is what was going on. So now I think parents, the students, as well as faculty will appreciate the need for face-to-face interaction, will also appreciate the online aspects of our education, and hopefully a synergy will be established, and we will be able to benefit from this. Lastly, from a student perspective, my son is in class 10th. Okay, so he's been in online mode for 1.5 years, and I think they're starting school on Monday. Maharashtra government is starting, so KV has called them, I believe, once a week or twice a week. Some pattern is there, 50% class. Oh, there is so much inertia to go to school. So I think this laziness aspect is something we will have to tackle. Those students say they want to come back, etc. They are there and still not coming to class, and I would like to do it at the comfort of my home, at my own pace. Those kind of aspects are something which we will have to handle. And I think it will take a little bit of time and effort from both the teacher and the students to overcome this inertia from their side, so that they can make use of the fact that we are going to be in an offline mode, but there would be components of online mode which are going to be present. One last thing about the exams and evaluation. I tried something during the last semester and this semester. I split the class into multiple groups and 8 students to 10 students. This time 10, last time 8. And I made separate quizzes for each. I took 8 quizzes, so 8 into 8, 64 papers I made for the quiz. And then I think 5 or 6 midterm multiple exams. So it was a lot of work from my side. But when I look back at it, I have such a huge basket of questions now. For conceptual questions, my quizzes are usually conceptual, no calculator, no numerical calculations. So I have so many questions, different kinds of questions on the same topic, and it's really a question bank that I have been able to put up. And this year, of course, I cannot give the same questions because the questions are circulating. So I am forced to think of newer and different questions. Obviously, they become a little bit more difficult than the last years. But this is something which I don't think I would have done if I was in an offline mode. Yes, I do have two quizzes in the first half and 2 in the second half, but that would be in class, closed book, closed notes, and the nature of the quiz itself would have been very different. One paper, okay, each time. So 4 different papers. Now I have about 64 question papers, of course, half an hour duration, but still it has forced me to think of several different questions, formats of the question, as well as the nature of the questions. So from a thought process point of view, there has been a lot of work, but a lot of gain also. So I think it's a good and a bad thing. Bad thing from a point of view of lack of face-to-face interaction, etc. But we did get to learn a lot and hopefully use them for the rest of our lives, for better teaching, better learning, better evaluation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sridharan. I think you have described yourself as a bold and chalk person. I think many of us are probably in the same category, because there is no probably substitute to that because of the immediacy of it. And another point I think which you have mentioned, that you are actually able to get more non-participating students on board, which is actually I mean, it's a great thing, because most of us have these nightmare of how to engage the non-participating students.
No, it was not there last year, Professor, but this year because of that additional material that is put up and the small amount of discussion which happens about that material which is not covered in class but which was put up. Those students, some who are there, they are able to, I don't know how many, but at least 1 or 2 who are just silent, suddenly they, ask questions. So you told this that time, in last year's class. Oh, good, you viewed it. Very good. I'm very happy. So it's something which is happening. I hope it happens in other courses also, but let's try.
Yeah, it is actually quite a challenge. And in fact, most of us have nightmares about this, and eventually we become resigned. But the fact that you can make a dent on this part, it should be a great thing. Thank you. I think we will return to you once the question and answer session begins. So I will now invite Professor Aarti Kalro, the last speaker in our panel discussion today.
So thank you, Professor Rao. And it's good to go last, because in some sense, I'll be synthesizing a lot of points that most speakers have spoken. And I agree with everything that everyone's told. And there's so much that concurs between what has been said, because all of us experience very similar things. But interestingly, because I come from School of Management, I'm going to kind of add a few more points, because our pedagogy in the classroom is slightly different. Especially the courses I teach, my area is mainly social innovations and marketing. So it's also a lot to do with, solving cases and analyzing cases and discussing cases in the classroom. So class participation is something which is very, very primary and important. And that was the biggest nightmare I had when we decided to go online, as Professor Roy was mentioning, right? Like, I really did have nightmares waking up saying, just before going online, right? Last year, August, this time, saying, will students respond, right? When I keep asking them, okay, anybody is got any thoughts. And fortunately, I've had a great experience even in the online, though I'm a big advocate of face-to-face classroom. Students have been very participatory in class, and they've kind of made me look forward to come into the classroom, even if it's in the digital mode. So thanks to them for making it engaging in some sense. So as I mentioned that I teach in the School of Management and I teach across programs. So I teach the core MBA course, I teach the BTech minor course, I teach a PhD elective course, and I also teach a PG Institute elective course. So across different levels, we've kind of tried and brought in a few changes. In fact, even before I start focusing on the main topic of discussion, saying how do we conflate the digital and the face-to-face, I would like to kind of say what has shifted from the face-to-face classroom to the digital for me. The first thing that I tell my students is instead of now recognizing you by your face, I actually recognize you by your voice. And yeah, that's the kind of association you have now with students, because most students have their cameras off, and it's understandable because they all have network issues. But jokes apart, interestingly, when I began the journey in the digital mode, when all of us began the digital journey, my biggest worry was learning the LMS tool and the technology to be able to deliver what was needed to be delivered in the classroom. I remember attending Professor Sundhar's class on Moodle. In fact, he's one of my favorite teachers, so patient and so seamlessly kind of explained the whole. It's a little embarrassing to tell you that I learned Moodle very, very recently, despite being in IIT for about 11 years. It kind of was a situation that expected us to learn, so I learned Moodle. And the focus initially was on learning the technology and LMS. Though this is an important condition, but according to me, which I later realized was not just a sufficient condition, because when I started teaching online, I realized that I could only cover about 70% of what I was covering in the face-to-face physical classroom. So if it's a 2-hour core course, 4 credit, we would meet 4 hours a week. And whatever I had planned compared to what I was doing previous years, or given in relation to what I was doing in the previous years, I was not able to complete what was needed to be completed for that particular session. And very soon I realized that I had to actually unlearn and relearn. The content was the same. You still have to give the new batches of students the same kind of content that is expected to be delivered in the course, but you kind of needed to unlearn and relearn the way you curate the content, the delivery of the content in some sense. Obviously, this delivery of content needed a lot more engagement. Earlier in the classroom also, as I said, being management education, we would have a lot of cases and a lot of learning by doing. But the focus now became just learning by doing, because we soon realized that a monologue is not going to keep their attention or engagement going for a long period of time. So that initial investment of time in terms of curating the delivery of the content in a different way has helped me a lot, has given me a lot of teachings, which I'll definitely now take back into the face-to-face classroom. As my previous panel members have spoken in terms of the material that is already there as tutorials, so some of the conceptual understandings of certain concepts that can be given to them as a pre-reading or a pre-video to be watched before the classroom discussion in some sense is a big repository that you have now that you can use even in your face-to-face classroom. The digital it's a double-edged sword, right? It has a lot of issues, the biggest being the aspect of assessment, which all of us are even worried about talking about it in this panel at this point in time. Apart from that, even the whole the tough part is the engagement in some sense, though we've tried to do whatever best we can do from both students and faculty point of view. But apart from having these cons, the digital also offers a lot of benefits. As I mentioned earlier, though I'm a strong advocate of the face-to-face classroom, I also think that we can blend the two models together to leverage on the benefits of both the physical classroom as well as the digital classroom. Some of these that I can draw from my experience in the last 1 year is that I have seen that students have been now able to access global classrooms, which perhaps earlier was not an opportunity given to everyone. So say, for example, a lot of our management students go for summer schools and semester exchanges. And you would typically see that not many people apply for these because the school would only sponsor a small part of the international exposure, and others would perhaps not be able to afford, a foreign travel or visa. But this year we've got a lot of applications going in for the summer school program, which is a 2-week program in a foreign university during the summer break. So we saw a lot of participation there. So in some sense, accessibility to global classroom has become a feasible option given the digital mode. And in the hybrid model, we could kind of look at this accessibility even when we go back into the face-to-face classroom, where we can invite global experts coming into the classroom. So in this digital teaching in the last 1.5 years or so, I have in some sense invited speakers from both corporate as well as academia, someone from the US, someone from Australia, though time zones are a big problem. But earlier we wouldn't have thought of leveraging that opportunity and getting somebody to be in your class. So sometimes we've had the protagonist of the case come in from the US, log in and talk to our students, or somebody from a different time zone, and students have had a great experience and they've had the opportunity to interact with that expert. Also, in the other way, I think the hybrid model can be leveraged is our continual education programs, which our school also has seen some benefits there. So we've kind of been now offering corporate training programs in the digital, which could later be translated to hybrid, where we see a great participation from participants and working executives from all over India, rather than just being focused in Mumbai or Pune and so on. So these are weekend classes, but you could kind of spread these out across weekdays and weekends, weekday evenings, but have participants come in from all over the domestic as well as international boundaries, given that you can give them digital access to the course that you're offering. And obviously, in terms of research, if we can kind of create more collaborations, the other advantage that I have seen is I have attended some recent conferences online digitally. So it is a great experience to go there physically and meet people and network with researchers in your area, but it also kind of in some sense saves time and makes it more affordable. So these are some kind of things that we could carry forward if we are looking at a hybrid model. Obviously, the issue that we will have to discuss in the hybrid model is the kind of digital platform that we will have to digital infrastructure that we will have to invest in, and the digital infrastructure usage training that we will have to give to both faculty and students. That is something that we can definitely talk about. So these are some thoughts that I thought I would share with all of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Karo. I think you have highlighted an important point, and I think this is an experience that is shared by all of us, that the possibility of actually internationalizing teaching and education as such, and also collaborative research, the opportunity that this digital mode offers. So I think it's a very important area that probably we need to explore further. And also another aspect that you also mentioned, that it is the continuing education programs. I think it should get a great fillip if we can actually harness this particular mode much better. And of course, the flip side is that you had to learn, the learning management systems and all that. In fact, when I was confronted with that, I also, this is the thought which went through my mind, it was like, for me, an old dog trying to, learn new tricks once again. But anyway, it had to be done. So, and I think we are all the better for it. So thank you very much. I think I'll quickly summarize some of the key points mentioned by our panelists. I think it was a very insightful discussion. And then I'll open it up for general discussion from the audience. It started with Professor Shyam Asodekar, and I think he fitfully did focus on some of the underlying aspects of learning and how this could be probably bettered through these combination of the two modes. Professor Alok Goel actually had also highlighted an important point that in digital mode, what is often missing is the physical sense of things and the physical understanding of systems, which is very critical to appreciation of what is there in theory. So how to better leverage the benefits of both these different modes in order to get a better understanding of the physical part. Professor Mukul actually also was an interesting point that he had mentioned, that one is to think both short-term and long-term effects and how to basically make use of collaborative learning. Professor Sridharan had highlighted some of the important aspects of face-to-face teaching. But one of the great advantages that has accrued, and I think all of us would agree, is that constant expansion in the content which has happened, because one is forced to actually delve more and more into the assessment side and not to be repetitive. And therefore, the expansion of the content has happened almost in a natural mode, which is a great advantage because now there is a large body of information and knowledge that can be actually shared. And finally, with Professor Calro, I think we also looked at the combination of the benefits of both and how it can really be made more wide angle, widespread. The teaching and the learning can be made more, more liberal in some sense, because you can come in contact with different systems, different kind of systems maintained by other universities and professors from there. They can bring in more ideas, which can all probably be put into a melting pot, and something new can probably sort of emerge from that. So all in all, it's a very fruitful discussion. And now I think I'll invite questions from the audience. Please also indicate if you would like a specific panelist to answer your question. The floor is open now.
Hi everyone, this is Abhishek from Mechanical Engineering. Am I audible? And can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please. Yes, please.
So this is a question
Yes.
for all the panelists. I have been recording the lectures rather than doing live lecturing because my course involved 90 minutes duration. So I thought experimenting with live lecturing was a dangerous thing to do. But apparently a lot of my colleagues did that. And in some of my students in their feedback said that they would have preferred live lectures. So I'm still not sure what would be a right thing to do, especially if the duration of the lecture is a long one, like 90 minutes. So would like to hear the thoughts of the panelists on this issue.
Yeah.
So Professor Abhishek, if I may answer that,
Sure.
at least from
Thank you.
what I have
Sure.
experienced. So I think this was a thought that all of us were toying with or debating with in the beginning of the COVID, right? So should we do it in the asynchronous mode or synchronous mode? So the advantage of having recorded lectures is that students can watch and then come in. Now, as you said, right, if the lecture is too long,
Yes.
90 minutes of digital engagement can be overwhelming for them and also bring in digital fatigue. And they also have other classes to go through. But interestingly, the feedback that I got very quickly from students is that was putting a lot of burden on them, where they not only had to watch a pre-recorded lecture, and also in some courses, faculty were making it compulsory for them to come for that 90 minutes lecture for Q&A. So it was in some sense increasing their engagement time in the classroom and with classroom material. And it was giving them less time to kind of synthesize and learn what they really needed to do from their end. It was also perhaps taking away a lot of their assignment time, and also given the kind of overwhelming things that were happening during the first wave and second wave in the pandemic, given in their homes, it was becoming difficult for them. So this was the kind of feedback I received from students. And also the point that I was saying that, so generally in the core courses, we have 2-hour lectures. I could only deliver about 70% of what I was doing in the face-to-face classroom. So what I would do is, for the 14 sessions that I had, I would in my course outline mark that some of these sessions will have some pre-recorded video lecture, but which will not be for more than 20 to 30 minutes. But that will serve the foundation for the discussion that we will have in the classroom for 2 hours. And even that 2-hour session, I would make sure that after 1 hour, I give them a 5 to 7 minutes break, and they can go get a cup of coffee or whatever they need, come back. And some of the activities in the classroom will again be in breakout rooms. So I very, very frequently use breakout rooms as well as polls and tools where they feel they are also participating in the classroom. So rather than making it a 2-hour lecture kind of a thing, it is more like, solving a case or solving some numericals and then discussing that using the whiteboard in the classroom. but I would kind of complement it with a pre-lecture if possible. But if it's a concept that I think it will be better to do it in the classroom with the students, then maybe I will, in the beginning of the lecture, tell them that I'm going to talk about this concept for 30 minutes. And then post that we'll be doing an activity to understand this or apply it on a case or so on. So this is my personal experience. Again, it depends on the course. It depends on the program you're teaching in and the students, the level of like other masters or bachelors and what kind of credit load they have in that semester.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Goyal, if you would like to respond. Yeah, I think you're on mute.
Professor Abhishek, I had a 1.5 hour lecture, which used to go up to 2 hours. So the system I followed is that I will upload the PowerPoint a day before.
Okay.
The lecture will be on time, and every 10 minutes to 15 minutes, I will stop for 30 seconds. Either they ask me questions or I ask them questions. So 1.5 hour became 2 hours usually because I had a 11 to 12:30 slot. So we used to carry up to 1 o'clock without any difficulty. But every 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I organize the lecture in a way that I will pause for 30 seconds at least, so that they could ask freely the questions, otherwise I will ask them the questions. So
Okay.
it worked out very well. And whenever you are short on time, weekends were there, Saturdays, Sundays. So if those who have missed the lecture, they can relook the recorded lecture and join again on Saturdays and Sundays with TAs and sometimes with me to have open discussions. But it's up to them how much they are taking the interest. But not too much pushing you can do when you are offline.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
you.
Professor Sham, if you want to take a view.
I just want to quickly add, I think what Professor Goyal is doing, something similar, I also do. I teach 2 courses a semester and about 90 minutes, 2 classes in each week. So it can become very jarry, and my style of teaching can sometimes be very intense, and maybe my way of presentation may be boring. I presume those kind of things, and then I always give, after 10, 12 minutes, exactly 2 minutes, I put a timer in front of me, and 2 minutes I open for questions. If they don't ask me questions, I ask them questions back. And if there are too many questions, then I make a note in my notebook and I say, okay, in the end, I will cover it. And sometimes the end is not, time is not there because the concept is not complete, or a solved problem is not completely solved, or to be an example problem is not solved. So then I will take a separate half an hour in the next class or the class after. And by the names, I know the questions and I address one by one and I answer those all questions, satisfy them. Plus I have a breakaway groups that they can send email to my TA, and I'm willing to sit on any day, evening or Saturday or Sunday, and I can sit them with them for half an hour, 45 minutes and satisfy all their questions. Third strategy I use is that every alternate week, I have 3 hours of tutorial and I will solve the problems. If they don't ask me questions, then I will have my repository of questions that I will solve those problems for them and illustrate the problem through the concept through the solved problem. And then I will have the presentations, 4 exams I keep totally in the semester. The quarter, the institute mid-sem, then third quarter, and then the final institute final. So I have 4 exams and then at least 7 tutorials. And then they can choose. If more than 3 or 4 students are there, I am very happy to sit with them in the evening for half an hour, 45 minutes and thrash out the questions and discuss. So I think I realize that, online is going to be very jarry. My derivations are very long. I use Blackboard, and I have some opposite experience. Somebody was telling that not enough was covered. It is again the nature of the subject. I was covering far too much in 1.5 hours. So I realized that online, because I'm showing my lecture notes, I'm showing my slides, I'm really going very fast. So I need to slow down. I need to give them time to think, to reflect, to react. So that is how I started giving them opportunity to think and interact them with more in smaller groups. And every student has different requirement, and we are very interdisciplinary. Somebody will be coming with a MSc microbiology or organic chemistry, and somebody may be a civil engineer and a chemical engineer, and somebody may be a mechanical engineer. So their requirements are different. Somebody does very well in heat transfer, but doesn't understand mass transfer, doesn't understand kinetics. So requirements are different. and very mathematical, analytical teaching is there. So I need to give them time and separate reading assignment and separate, attention. So I think online teaching made me more busy. Literally, the work increased by a factor of 2. But I think my effectiveness also of teaching, I utilized this adverse situation for in my benefit, and my contact one-on-one really increased dramatically. Which also earlier also I was taking 7 tutorials, and I keep all my other than classroom completely voluntary, so that there is a pressure for them to teach themselves. And one benefit that I find in my students is that now that there was a clear stratification in the class, somewhere superb, somewhere not that superb. But now what I'm seeing is that even the fellows who are on the lower rung of the grade are asking me questions, and their level of understanding is, if not 100%, it is 90%, it is 85%, which earlier I always doubted that whether they understand at least 60%. But now their conceptual understanding is much better, because I'm making special efforts to reach out to them, because there is a problem of internet, there is a problem of bandwidth, there is so many problems. I also take conference phone calls and discuss with them. So there are many ways in which I have improved myself. So I think I have become a better teacher in last 3 semesters.
Thank you.
Shyam, I must admit that you have confessedly, said that you are a boring teacher. So we may have to take a relook why they gave you the award. Well, levity apart, I think I feel that it's very important component which has to be appreciated by students alike, that there is a lot of self-learning that they have to do in this mode. You cannot actually expect in a digital and a combined mode that it would be spoon-fed just as you used to be in a face-to-face mode. So there has to be an extension of the hand from the student side as well. Yes, Professor Sridharan, if you would like to comment on this particular aspect.
Yeah, thank you. Since Avishek also teaches fluid mechanics and I have been teaching UG fluid mechanics, I thought it's something which I can share with him. I started with live classes because that's what I thought was the right thing to do. Then as I told you, I made batches of 8 for the quizzes. So we used to have quizzes on Monday and Thursday afternoon, or Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, three batches of 4 batches. So what I did 2 weeks just before mid-sem or just after mid-sem last year, I said I will post recordings of this week on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, so we will have the quiz, the regular slot, but the class time slots, I will divide you. The same group of 8 will come for half an hour, and I had this 11 to 12:30. So I made it 11 to 1, and half an hour, 4 batches would come and ask questions on the videos. Okay. So like this, two slots of 3 hours became 2 slots of 2 plus 2, 4 hours, and I covered the entire class batch of 8. So they would be waiting in the Google Meet, and I would let them in and ask. So this was the video, 3-hour video or 2.5 hours, whatever, and your questions on this. Turned out that first week some questions were there. Second week far too less questions, and I had made it compulsory to come. So they would show up. No sir, no questions. I didn't get a chance to watch the video. Okay, so then I took a poll. Just after this exercise, I said, what do you guys prefer? For me, it's the same amount of work, but tell me what do you prefer. And almost 100% preferred online live class. Okay, almost one person said once in a way it's okay, but don't make it a norm that you will have recorded thing. Okay, so they said, and I asked them the reason, why do you prefer this? They said, sir, we stick to a time we are there. So we are forced to, whether they come or no, that's a different thing. At least the people who are coming to class, they have a time slot allotted to that. Otherwise, they say that they have to find a time slot to come and listen to the lecture, and that never happens. Like how we procrastinate, they also procrastinate, and it never happens there. And because there are other issues at home, internet, etc., this computer is available for them at this time, and sharing resources is happening. They say it's becoming it's not something which we enjoy doing it. So you please have live classes. So from that day on till today, it's been only live classes. They don't like the concept of I give recorded videos of example problems. This year I'm doing that because I have a repository of what I did last time. I said these are over and above what I will solve. So 2 or 3 more problems you're going to see through these videos. take a look at it. So that they're able to do because the concept is covered. So viewing of examples can happen in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever they choose to see, or additional explanation. Like for example, fluid particle acceleration or Reynolds transport theorem, which is something which you explain for 2 hours, still there are questions. So I say you please listen to the last year's video. There might be answers to that question. Otherwise, I will take your questions separately. So offline, I meet with them one-on-one, and they're able to we are able to fill in the gap. So online live is what the mantra is.
Thank you.
So Mukul, would you like to comment?
Just a quick one from personal experience, at least from my side, from when I have done pre-recording of classes even before the pandemic started. I find that it's a bit difficult to pace yourself. I mean, you either end up doing too much material or doing too little, and the reason for that, of course, is that there is no feedback. I mean, you cannot figure out at what pace you should go, and so for that reason, also I think. This time during the pandemic season, the online whatever, I find that I'm going substantially slower now than I would have done even in an in-person class, and that is because there are questions coming up all the time, and that sort of reduces the pace at which I can cover material. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, perhaps that's the need for the course. I mean, that's the need for the material for that course. So, I mean, that's my feeling. I think many of us have also echoed similar sentiments as that. I mean, at the bottom of it all, it's a bit difficult to pace yourself, even though there are definite advantages of pre-recording and making it available and things of that kind. As Aarti had also mentioned, several pluses and minuses of the thing. But for me personally, I think it's a bit difficult to pace yourself. That's the critical thing out here.
Thank you.
So, Professor Abhishek, I presume you may be leading with a feeling that you have had over-prescription of the remedies that you want for the academic illness. I hope it does not jeopardize your academic well-being.
I know,
Well,
absolutely.
I really hope that we go back to physical mode. So.
Yes, and this is just feedback. We all go through the process of trying things out. I mean, that's perfectly fine. I've also tried completely offline recording and putting it up and things of that kind. One has to try it out, of course. There's no single one-size-fits-all answer to these questions.
Yeah, I think we are still on a learning curve for optimal usage of these platforms and this media.
All of us are on a learning curve, I think. Yeah.
So, any other questions from the audience? Okay, maybe I can take the liberty. This one point which I think I had mentioned in my introduction, if this whole thing can actually make some improvement in the way the research is conducted by the students. So of course, barring the the current situation that the students are also learning how to use the medium better. And so if I take that portion out, do you see any grand potential, quote unquote, grand potential for improving the efficiency of the research process by your student? What has been your experience for the last 2 years in your interaction with your research students? So we can start with Professor Shyam, if you can make a mention of your
well, Professor Roy, I am 50% experimentalist and 50% modeler. And when I say experimentalist, nearly 20% is going to field, picking up samples or interacting with industry, or doing something of that sort, or working with municipality, or going to the ministry and getting some data, interacting with them. And remaining 30% is doing something in laboratory. And many times I have laboratory reactors which have absolutely died. I work with plants, I work with microorganisms, they have died. So students kept out of institute, and they are working from home. Only the modeling, only review, that kind of activity, or modeling the data of PhD students further in different way. Those kind of things I had to literally force them to adapt to the newer, pressure, and we got it done. But I am extremely unhappy about my own research output in past 1.5 years. It has really gone down dramatically. And what I'm afraid is that I am successful in publishing paper or whatever, but the consciousness that I always have in my mind, that is it a useful research, quote unquote, with whatever, with little bit of creativity and understanding I have about reality, I think I have done less useful work. Research wise, I'm saying. You are mute. You are mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it surely is a big challenge, no doubt about that, especially for experimental kind of work. And I've had students who express a lot of frustration about them not being able to really continue and make use of the time that is just simply flying by. Okay, so yeah, Professor Goyal, if you want to make a point.
Yeah, same situation, because most of the students are forced to do analytical work, simulations on the machine, but they are doing a big bridge. They can't go and see what is in reality. So they don't have the feeling. So they get some results, they don't realize what matters, what does not matter. Because drawings can give you only limited information. We don't have walkthrough simulations. So we need to upgrade our software so they can see the real bridges, like live bridges, and how they are constructed, but they can't go and see. So they don't get the feeling of whatever they are doing. So theoretically, they are doing research for for the sake of it, but that understanding part is missing.
Yeah, I think most of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of us have had to actually perforce shift towards, theoretical or simulation kind of work because of to actually close the gap.
No choice. No field measurements, nothing. Yeah.
Right. But there is, is obviously a big deficiency that you don't have a physical field, because finally, when you go to the industry, you will have to work with physical systems. So it is important that you get a feel for things also. There is no doubt about that.
But it's only for a few years, one more year maybe.
Yeah.
But eventually we'll go back to the physical understanding.
Yeah, maybe it's a small blip here. Yeah,
but they are better trained in software. That's the advantage we have now.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yes, Professor Chandorkar, if you would like to comment on this particular aspect.
Yes, I must admit that I really haven't given it too much thought, or especially on the topic of how we can use our online experience so far to further or enhance our own research activity. Intuitively one can feel that there is at least something that could be done, but I really don't know at this time what it could be. But having said that, there are two practical aspects that I found very useful of the online experience. One of them has been that many project review meetings that we would travel to Delhi or to Chennai or wherever to conduct in person were all done equally effectively online. And I think that's a big plus, and that's probably going to stay. That perhaps increase the way our project evaluation or whatever that kind of thing is efficiently done. So I think that is a good thing that has happened. The other is the way I have handled a couple of my consultancy projects. Despite the lockdown, the companies with which I was working, they managed to do hardware kind of stuff, product development, things of that kind, very effectively, with me participating with them in their meetings online. And that has actually perhaps been a little more efficient than it otherwise would have been, because otherwise they would have expected me to go to their place, or they would have come to IIT Bombay, would have had in-person discussions when it was not really needed for those kinds of things. So now that has opened up. So to that extent, I know that this is just scratching the surface a little bit on what could be done. But at the moment, that's the only thing that I can comment on that aspect of it.
Yeah, actually, I think the administrative processes have become somewhat easier, and I think less time consuming and more conserving on the resources that you have, no doubt.
Yes.
Professor Sridharan, would you like to comment?
Yeah, actually, it has had a rather negative impact on most of the stuff. What Professor Goyal and Professor Asolekar said, that is very much true, because experimental masters have been forced to be converted to computational masters. And the problem is that this thing happened so suddenly that students did not have the resources at all. Meaning you had a laptop probably, but to connect to the institute or to a server, etc., was just not happening. Okay, and especially last year, when the students were trying, uh, it just didn't work. Meaning something got done, which a student here probably would have done it in 1.5 months. He took about 4 to 5 months to do, and obviously there is a little bit of lot of dissatisfaction from the student side itself. Sir, kya socha tha, kya ho gaya? This is exactly what they said. I thought I would do these things. Then we went to numerical, and we are now left with nothing to show as a thesis. They value it whether we like it or not. It's their work, and they had nothing to show. And two batches have kind of suffered like that. And what another perspective, which what has happened is, like, since I am in mechanical, we have projects with AERB, etc. They started working pretty much full time since last July. In terms of full time means they work, I think the pay scale wise, I think 80-90% of their workforce came in. So they were just not, they were unable to understand that we are still not open. So it led to a lot of, you're not doing anything kind of thing, but we just could not do anything here, including settlement of bills and purchases. Nothing could be done. Now things have, been streamlined after almost a year and a half, and seeking extension for the projects. And it was a nightmare, because we were not on the same platform. The sponsors as well as faculty members, they were not on the same page with regard the problems faced. So this was a complete, and the problem is not that. The undoing of so much of what has happened is taking a lot of time administratively also. So the focus now, after IIT has opened and students are here, is on the backlog of the purchases, of the bill settlements. And so research per se is stuck somewhere. It is happening, but not the way it should have happened. And one very unfortunate thing that has happened is MTech student of mine who is stuck in Tamil Nadu. He just didn't want to come, and there is no way I'm able to force him to come. Okay, so he missed the first deadline, and now he says, "Sir, I missed it, but now I'm asking nobody. They are not giving me permission. They will not give you permission like that." So he is just having a field day without doing any work, and it's a complete experimental work. Neither does he have the resources for simulations. So he's just doing something. I'm doing this, he's saying, but I know it's absolutely nothing that he's doing. So it's a kind of a very, very, meaning it can be very positive had we been geared to it and if we have the resources. But what has happened in the last couple of years has not been very pleasant as far as research is concerned. And hopefully, if we are going to experiment on online mode of research or something, we should have the tools at both ends, and that would help the students actually more than anything else. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Thanks.
Thank you. I think you spoke of research backlog. Just the other day, I read a newspaper article. Apparently, the courts across India has logged up a backlog of 4 lakh extra cases over the last 2 years. So it's the same problem there. Yeah, Professor Cardlore, you had indicated, one of the advantages that you have had is collaborative work, the intensification of that. Apart from that, do you see any other advantage?
In terms of research collaborations, I think even before COVID, we definitely had international collaborations, and we've had on our student RPC panels members from outside the institute who would join online, right? So in that sense, definitely, I haven't really put a thought, as Professor Mukul was mentioning. So I kind of go by his phrase that I've really not put a serious thought, but definitely it has helped in meeting external collaborators for your projects and kind of tying up. So one of our research projects has been translated to market as a Section 8 not-for-profit company. So for that particular project, we've had the opportunity to meet, a lot of trusts and foundations who are based all over India online. And these meetings do happen effectively. And it kind of also gives you the leeway to meet the heads of these foundations and trusts more easily. Otherwise, it would have not been possible in the face-to-face mode, given their schedules. So that has definitely worked in our favor. But in terms of research, initially students were finding it very difficult, especially when they were during the lockdown at their homes, could not focus on their work. But all of them, given the first opportunity to move back into campus, grabbed that opportunity so that they could come back and focus on their work. Yeah. These are some short thoughts.
Thank you. I think overall, I feel that there is a need to restructure the research process. so that the less productive side can be taken care of by these digital modes, which do not really directly contribute to the research as such, but basically gives you the administrative background and the advantages and the support. Of course, the real innovative and the thinking part would still remain based on face-to-face contact, the dialectic process of learning, which I think which would be better if people are sitting across the table that way. All right, yeah. Thank you very much for your inputs and your comments. So if there is any further question from the audience, we'll take them. We have actually scaled quite a bit of time. We are almost 1.5 hours. So if there are any questions, quick questions, one more question, if there is one from the audience. Okay, I think since there is no further response from the audience, I would sign off, and I would ask Professor Patwardhan to take over and say a few concluding words as far as this panel discussion is concerned. Professor Patwardhan, please.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, I just want to give a note of thanks here. So many thanks for finding time to participate in this exciting discussion. I think it was really exciting. I got to know many facets which I had not thought about. Yeah, like Professor Arti said, things have become international. We have started inviting, even for research talks, we have started inviting people routinely during weeks, weekly seminars, which we would have never done earlier. And then, unless somebody physically visits, we wouldn't invite those people to come to the campus. So now things are really changing in many ways. And so it was really exciting to hear from all of you, the things that you have been trying. And I would also like to thank the audience and then invite them to attend the next session, which is scheduled on 6th. So thanks again for everyone. And with this, let's end this session here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Professor
so much.
Patwardhan.
Thank
Professor
you. Thank you
Rao.
very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll sign off.
Really benefited by listening to colleagues. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.